Alrighty, enough with the riffraff. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Happy to have you here. I'm jumping right in. I was excited to do this, but then also leading up to it the past 15-20 minutes I've kind of been stalling. I just bought a bag of hot Cheetos. If you know me, I love hot Cheetos. So I was just kind of stalling for a little bit. But here we are, back with another one. Got a couple topics that I look forward to diving into today. So let's just get right into it. Hope everybody's doing well. From my actually all across the United States, let's say. Hope you're staying warm, staying dry, all that good stuff. And also might as well mention, if you've been listening, if you've tuned into any of these, I just want to say thank you. Hopefully something stuck, something was interesting, thought-provoking, let's say. But otherwise, hope you're doing well. And if not, I hope you find the strength to endure. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, something obviously I've been thinking about for quite some time, but it's the idea of putting yourself out there. And that comes to mind in so many different contexts, but one of them, the one that most directly relates to right now is the podcast and sharing that. And making these recordings, making them publicly available. I think it's like a very, very open way to put yourself out there, very vulnerable. It's live, it's your thoughts. So it can be quite a lot, and then to make it publicly available for anyone to access is also quite interesting. A couple things to say to that, it is still a little bit nerve-wracking to me each time. I think I mentioned before, I do get better at it. It feels like a muscle that I'm developing, but it still is a little bit of a challenge, which is cool. It keeps you on your toes, right? But then also at the same time, in my mind, I think something that's put me at ease is not that many people are listening, right? So it's it's all right, because, probably not that many people are hearing this, and I've shared this on my Instagram, I want to say yes, but there's a quote that goes something like, you would care far less about what other people think about you if you realized how little they actually do. And I really believe that. I think even though in our minds we're always worried about what others might say or think, in reality, people are so caught up in whatever they're doing in the day-to-day that they probably don't even notice. They might think of it for a couple minutes or two, 30 seconds, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But after that, they're going about their day and they're on to the next thing. Kind of goldfish have small attention spans, or like the dog from the movie Up, just constantly distracted by the squirrel, right? Or kids nowadays, in my class, anything that happens, they're very easily distracted. But, what was I talking about? Dang it, that's crazy. I really lost it. One of those moments, man. The idea that not that many people are listening. But that being said, also at the same time, I know just so many at the same times. It has been really cool to see the number of people that are listening. I think for me, I'm just starting out, so even I remember when I got excited when I hit 5 on one episode, right? And I was like, oh, that's really cool. 5 people, whether it was 30 seconds, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, actually took some time to listen to this. And that's kind of cool. And I can keep doing this, and that number could possibly grow slowly over time if I keep doing this. The numbers at the moment are not important at all, but it is interesting to think of it that way. I'm not trying to be a million subscriber type person, right? So yeah, hitting 5 was just like, it was fascinating that I was excited about that. What else about putting yourself out there? I've actually discussed this with a couple of my friends, and I've had thoughts and they've had thoughts that are interesting and I thought would be worth sharing here. Is that a couple of my close friends, I've mentioned that I'm doing this, and then, in the midst of the conversation, they'll say something along the lines of, I hope, or I plan, I intend, I hope that one day my life will be in a more put together place, more stable place where I can do something like this, right? Like I can do a podcast, I can write a blog, I can, post more on social media, whatever the case may be. And I totally get that. I know these people well, and I know, for the most part, their life circumstances. So I get that. I know how they operate as people, right? That's just how they move. Like they want to feel secure and ready for something, to take on something of this nature. And the interesting side of it for me is because personally, I'm a little bit of both, right? Like I'm a little bit of like, yes, let me take my time. Let me make sure ducks are in a row, right? I got everything. I measured twice. I try to do that as much as possible. But also at the same time, I'm also pretty open to just going for things, right? Like, oh, you want to take a spontaneous trip here? Sure, why not? I don't even know what this place is, but we're going to find out, and we're going to have an experience, right? I'm pretty open to experiences if there's enough interest for me there. Okay, here we go. This is what I wanted to bring up. So I've got my friends that are a little bit on the more, prepared side, cautious side, take your time side, which I am also with them in that camp. But then I have that inkling, that urge to just go for things sometimes and just whatever, fuck it, try it, right? And that's gotten me in trouble, or just silly moments here and there throughout life. But then it's also led to like some really cool moments, right? The spontaneity is exciting in life sometimes, right? Obviously, if you're safe and doing something you feel comfortable with doing, then, go for it. But in relation to this podcast and putting myself out there, something that I've heard a lot from, just all kinds of people, in particular, the guy from Modern Wisdom, I've mentioned him before, but Chris Williamson. Listening to him and how his journey has been, he's like almost 600 episodes in, I want to say, like 550, something like that, a good number. And pretty much one of his recommendations is like just to get up and do it, right? If this is something that you've been thinking about, just do it, right? Like put the pen to paper. Don't wait for some time where you feel like you're going to be all secure and prepared and ready to go for it, right? And that really resonated with me because I could see myself taking too much time and saying, I'm not ready to do this, I'm not prepared, I need to take more time to get ready, to be more articulate, to read more, to have more topics, to get better technology, blah, blah, blah. The list could go on. But that's just going to delay me who knows how long, right? So being able to just say, you know what? I got the tools that I need to do this. The barriers to putting the final product together are pretty manageable. So why not just do it and give it a go and then iterate as you go? I talked about that a little bit in a prior episode, but yeah, essentially just be okay with it. It's obviously not polished. You are not polished. You are not your final form yet, but you're doing it and you're figuring out as you go. You're iterating as you go, and as some people in the professional world will say, is like you're building the plane as you're flying it. And that's pretty much what I've been trying to do throughout this time. And I guess all to say, putting myself out there, it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, it's been nerve-wracking. It's been yeah, it's been nerve-wracking but also exciting at the same time to just continue to add to the portfolio, let's say, and build, right? And just stack episodes and see the scroll of episodes get a little bit longer each time. So it's kind of cool. I feel like it's like slowly climbing a mountain, right? If anybody out there does like backpacking or hiking or all that kind of stuff, like it's a climb, it's a trek. If you got a long way to go, and sometimes it can get rough, it can get tiring, and it can be easy to stop or give up or lose hope and just be like get demoralized, let's say, right? So there's a lot of resilience, endurance that I'm trying to tap into in doing all this. And I'll also admit that, again, not to brag or boast, anything like that, but I do feel like I'm working at capacity with everything that I'm doing. So it is a little bit of an effort for me to make everything happen on a regular basis. But again, it's what I'm signing up for. Like I'm aware of that. I want that. I'm seeking it out. I'm just testing my limits, seeing my boundaries, seeing exactly what I can take on. And yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about being out there. I think that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about. But then also a couple of related thoughts that came up, and relevant. So I actually, for whatever reason, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I forget which one it came from, but somebody had brought up the concept of a beginner's mind, and just a fascinating concept. I didn't even know that there was actually like it actually is a concept. Like it's not just a phrase we use in, I think the word is colloquial, like regular language. But yeah, it actually has an origin. And let me just read what I came across, and then I'll get into how, why it's important to me, how, why it resonates essentially. So the beginner's mind, let me first explain how I think of it, and then I'll read the Wikipedia page. So I think of a beginner's mind as being open to trying new things, essentially, to being open to failure, to being open to starting from the very beginning of a craft, a skill, let's say. Take, for example, riding a bike. If you've never rode a bike before, you're going to have to do it with training wheels, probably, right? And that's going to look silly, especially if you're anything past a teenager. But if you want to learn how to ride a bike, you're going to have to put those training wheels on, get used to it, and then kind of go from there. And then you expand that to everything in the world, right? Cooking, dancing, singing, art, sports, professional stuff, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on, right? And yeah, just being open to failure, being open to not being good at something, being open to asking questions, to not be the expert at something, to be a rookie, to be, hence, a beginner. And so now I'll read a little bit of the Wikipedia page. So it actually comes from this Japanese concept. It's Shoshin, and it says here that it is a concept from Zen Buddhism, meaning beginner's mind. So Shoshin, I guess, means beginner's mind. And it refers to having an attitude of openness, eagerness, and lack of preconceptions when studying, even at an advanced level, just as a beginner would. The term is especially used in the study of Zen Buddhism and Japanese martial arts, and was popularized outside of Japan by this book by Shunryu Suzuki's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And I'll just read a couple more sentences. So the practice of Shoshin, so adopting a beginner's mind, let's say, acts as a counter to the hubris and closed-mindedness often associated with thinking of oneself as an expert. This includes, I'll stop right there. I think this is a good place to stop. So, why is this relevant to me? Well, it really is relevant in a whole bunch of ways. So one, in my personal life, right, I can say that I really do try to adopt a beginner's mind, especially when it's something that I have no clue what I'm talking about or no clue what I'm doing. And actually, an example came to mind, and that is working with cars. So, living with my family the past couple of years, I've actually had the opportunity to watch my dad help me work on the car, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's been a learning experience because, as I just mentioned, I have no clue for the most part what I'm doing. I've learned maybe 5 to 10% of everything there is to know. But I've really had to humble myself, right? I really had to humble myself and just know that you don't know shit, man. Like, you have no clue what you're talking about. So just watch closely, pay attention, ask questions, write notes, that kind of stuff, right? And then also in just, let's say, how would you explain it? Just like common knowledge of the world or what you know, right? I know that despite everything that I've tried to put in front of me, books, podcasts, articles, videos, all kinds of stuff, right? That I know a minuscule fraction of everything there is to know. And so you should have some humility and be humble in the face of that whatever amount of time you spent learning, researching, it's still, you still have got a long way to go. You've got a long mountain to climb of knowledge, essentially. And, you probably will never get there. And that's the beauty of being able to talk to other people, is that other people can actually help you get closer. But you need that open mind. You need that beginner's mind. And I actually really like that it mentions to have a beginner's mind even at the advanced level, right? And also that it acts as a counter to the hubris and closed-mindedness often associated with thinking of oneself as an expert. Now, this is where it gets spicy, but also it's relevant to me. Something that I've noticed, let's say in the past couple of years, maybe it probably is a human problem. It just has been exacerbated and put at the forefront in the past couple of years, is this idea that the experts are the people that we should listen to, and the experts know exactly what they're talking about, know how to diagnose a situation, and what are the appropriate steps, solutions to remedy that situation, right? And you can apply this to most situations, I think, a variety of situations and contexts, but I'll be honest, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the COVID response. You could say for most of the world, most of the world, yes, with a few exceptions throughout the world that did handle COVID a lot differently than what we here in the United States are familiar with, and then, other Western countries and other countries closely related to the United States. There are some exceptions, but in my view, in my observation, it just felt like, even to this day, that credentials and being identified as an expert was enough to bulletproof your claims, bulletproof your solutions, bulletproof your suggestions, let's say. And it felt like exactly this, what I just read about the beginner's mind, like there was a lot of hubris and closed-mindedness when it came to all kinds of questions related to COVID. Like, let's lace them out. What are the origins of COVID? Who were the people that were most severely impacted? Are there any alternative therapeutics, prophylactics that could have been used to help either prevent or mitigate the severity of the COVID that people got, whether or not masks were really effective, whether or not lockdowns were effective, or if they actually did more harm than good, right? All these different questions, and then you can go into the vaccine, but that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, might as well, right? Might as well, since we're here. We're in the deep end, might as well. And I just propose all of these as questions, right? And I'll try to tie it back together to this concept of the beginner's mind. So, some would say, I would say, a legitimate question would be, well, you know, who really needs to take the vaccine, right? Does a young person need to take it? A young person that's healthy for the most part, no comorbidities, nothing unusual about their health, versus somebody that is a little bit older, has a little bit more, that has other health situations going on. How does the vaccine apply in a situation where somebody already got COVID? Or if somebody, again, would rather try different therapeutics, other medicines that are legitimate and widely available, let's say, to combat COVID. Like, why did it have to only be the vaccine? Or I also know now that they have something else that came from Pfizer, like a pill or something like that. I don't even know what it's called, but I know that that's available. But essentially, yeah, that the last question that I propose is like, why only the vaccine? Why not consider other options, right? And it felt like to even ask any of these questions, right? Any of those questions that I just listed could have been seen as, you know, in the eyes of the experts, as foolish, as silly, as unscientific. That's kind of putting it nicely. And then if you go a step further, you could have people call you conspiracy theorist, right-wing nut job, Trump supporter, a racist, and the list goes on, right? Just for asking some of those questions, any one of those questions, you could have been labeled something like that. And while I understand that there are experts for a reason, there are people that have done the work, that have studied for X number of years, and so they have a place to speak from, right? A place of, you know, work and evidence and research and so on. But it just felt a little bit closed-minded and hubris. I don't know if I used hubris the right way there, but it felt like there was a lot. It felt like there was a lot of hubris going around. Essentially, you could put it like, I am the expert on this particular topic, so therefore you should listen to me. And if you have any other ideas, even questions, don't even think about it. You're probably getting the information from the wrong place, and let me just pause here and say, if you're listening to this, I do plan on doing like a full recording on COVID at some point. I know I'm getting kind of decently deep into it right now, but you know, obviously this is a big topic and really only touching the surface. But I'll say, personally, you know, I brought up a few of these questions to my physician just out of curiosity, and I had that as a response. I was like, you're probably getting your information from a bad place. Stay away from that. Don't do it. It's not good. You're only going to hurt yourself and the people around you. This is effectively the message that I got, and that was a pretty close paraphrase. And I just remember being very taken aback by that. Very interesting. We didn't have like a heated argument or anything like that, but I did just pose questions to him. So it was interesting to see the response. But you know, to me, in my eyes, it just feels like a more honest, more open-minded person, you know, despite their credentials, despite their expertise, will be like, okay, you know what, like, let's talk about that. Where'd you get that from? What makes you think that? here's where you're legitimate, here's where you're on the right track, here's where you might be a little bit off. Like, let's have a conversation instead of just blatantly dismissing what I'm bringing up as, oh, that's probably just bad information, right? And so, yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up this portion of the pod. At least this topic, not this part. Yeah, this topic. So again, the beginner's mind, I think, is something that I came across yesterday in the podcast. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot in my life. It's a big part of how I try to live, right? Again, I'm very curious, very open. Like, if you have ideas, I'm open to listening, and then I'm going to filter through it myself, right? Based on my life experience, based on my foundation of knowledge. And then I'll go from there. I'm not going to blatantly dismiss something just because it's foreign to me or I don't agree with it, right? I'm a listener. I'm open, and I try to avoid hubris however possible, right? Again, this idea that despite your expertise, despite all the time and effort that you've put into a subject matter, that you can still learn something from someone, right? And as a teacher, I think many teachers out there probably understand that even though you're the expert in the room, that you can learn a lot from your students, right? And I can say for sure in my experience so far that I've learned quite a lot from my students. And yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap up on, like, a happy way to wrap up that topic. Again, I'll just quickly mention I do plan on doing a full-length conversation with someone, if there are people out there open to it, but a dialogue on COVID and my experience and what I've seen and all kinds of stuff. And it'll be really interesting. I've mentioned it so much. I'm pretty sure this episode is going to get labeled with the COVID recommendation, like, learn more about COVID here. So that'll be interesting. But anyhow, the next topic that I wanted to get into that I thought would be really fun to share is I just wrapped up reading and watching Animal Farm with my class. And so if you're not familiar, Animal Farm is a book written by George Orwell. When was it written? 1945, August. So pretty much after Civil War, goodness gracious, after World War II, okay? After World War II, and what is it? It's a allegory, satirical allegory, it says here, where the farm animals, so it takes place on a farm, the farm animals pretty much revolt against the human that owns the farm. They take over, and they start to organize themselves, make all the rules for themselves, organize the work and all this kind of stuff. And it's essentially an allegory for the Soviet Union, if you're familiar with that. And I kind of touched upon this in the last one, a little bit in the last one when I mentioned The White Pill by Michael Malice. But yeah, there was a revolution that happened in Russia, where they overthrew the Tsar, the Bolsheviks, and then they had a civil war to figure out who was going to be in power. Bolsheviks in power, I want to say. Hopefully I'm getting this right. But then essentially you got like this 60-year period run by Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin that became tyrannical quickly. And the story Animal Farm is an allegory for that. Where you have these pigs, because they are able to read and write, they, appoint themselves as leaders of the farm. They say, we know best, we know how to organize, we know how to read, we know how to get everything right and tight. And there was one pig that had the right intentions, that had a good idea, but, I'll stop there because I'll be spoiling the story. But so essentially this farm, they kick out the human, but they end up kind of right back where they started, even though they had this vision of like a better farm, better future for all the animals, where they would enjoy the fruits of their labor and all this kind of stuff. So many things to share on that. So one, it was really interesting to go and read that again as an adult. I read it in my senior year of high school, but I don't remember it that well. but I know he read it for sure, part of AP Lit, I want to say. But it was actually a really fun experience reading it now, just given the familiarity that I have with the subject matter. So I've listened to quite a lot of people on the Soviet Union. So again, Michael Malice, Jordan Peterson, a whole bunch of other people. And then I've also read a little bit of the Gulag Archipelago. So if you're familiar with that, or if you're not familiar with that, it's this 3-volume memoir/historical account of the Soviet Union going through the prisons, getting interrogated, being in the work prisons, and surviving essentially, by this guy named Alexander Solzhenitsyn. So I read a little bit of that. It's these volumes are like 700, 800 pages, and I'm only on the first one, so quite a lot, quite dense, but it is actually very eye-opening. So I'm very familiar with the topic. So reading Animal Farm is a good experience and very well written. And I like that the characters are all interesting. It's cool, which is related to how like my students experienced it, which, you know, they all know farm animals, pigs, cows, chickens, ducks, dogs. So in that sense, it was really relatable. And then once the plot gets going, like the kids, what I found really interesting and just really cool is that they were actually able to keep up with the plot. So it made it easy to discuss and give them assignments based off of this, right? Like to get them thinking. And then you go a step further and start talking about how, you know, certain characters start making power plays and other characters are, you know, victims of this power play, and other characters see what's happening but aren't able to really expose it or articulate it in a way, or they're scared to, right? Because there's like a lot of fear in this story and in the Soviet Union, self-censorship, let's say. And so it was really, really fun to get into all of that with my students. Obviously not everybody was into it, but for the most part, the kids were really down to participate. So that made me really happy. And then we capped it off with the movie, actually. So we watched on YouTube. Shout out to YouTube, whoever put that out there. On YouTube, there's the full-length cartoon movie, and it was really good, really fun. It was nice to have a visual to the characters because we'd just been looking at a PDF of the book. Shout out to Google. I was able to find a PDF. But yeah, all to say, reading Animal Farm was a really good experience. I teach 6th grade, and obviously I know seniors and juniors probably get this in high school, but I think I did it with my 6th graders. So I think if there's a way, you know, who knows, but if there's a way to incorporate this into the curriculum, I think it would be a really good way to get your English in, get your reading comprehension, get your critical thinking, analysis, all that kind of stuff going while reading a fun and engaging story that you can finish with a movie at the end. Like, it was like you could build a whole lesson plan, like a month or something. I don't know if a month is the right timeline, but something like that, right? So yeah, reading Animal Farm was a lot of fun. Highly recommend it if if you haven't read it, if you haven't heard of it, look into the Soviet Union because there's a lot of stuff there. I think, part of studying history is to learn from our past mistakes, as cliche as they may be. But anyhow, a couple more topics, and then I'm out of here. So let's see. Let's start with this. So something I've been thinking about a lot and has been, obviously I think about a lot. Maybe I think a lot. So be it. Is this idea, well, one, just silence in general, right? And then two is like silence as therapy. So again, not to brag, but at the moment, my day-to-day is pretty jam-packed, and I'm constantly talking to people, constantly engaging with people. So it's like, okay, students for most of the day, staff, teachers, hall monitors, that kind of stuff. And then immediately after that, I'm going to teach basketball, like pretty much every day of the week. So 3 days out of the week, I'm teaching basketball, giving lessons. The other 3 days, I'm coaching. So it's constant interaction with these kids of all ages, different levels, different grade levels, skill levels, personalities, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got the parents on top of that. So constantly interacting with them, meeting people, trying to memorize names. And then I've also got my own basketball business and group of clientele, let's say, that are totally separate from these lessons and the coaching. So trying to keep up with those kids and their parents. And then, just everybody that I try to, keep up with on a regular basis, my friends, the guys I play basketball with, my high school friends, college friends, that kind of stuff. And for me, it's just constant talking. And there's a couple things that like to point out in all of this. One, for me, and I imagine other people can relate to this, I lean more towards introverted. I do enjoy interacting with people, but I do lean more towards introverted these days. So I'm okay with it being quiet. But when I am around people, I want to be active and I want to engage and I want to listen and have good dialogue, good conversation. But it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of mental effort. It's not always easy for me. Yes, one, is not always easy, and then two, like after, you can feel a little bit drained, a little bit exhausted. Not because it was bad, but just because it took cognitive effort, and that's actually it's a thing. Cognitive energy is a thing. So sometimes I can get a little bit tired, and then two, I already kind of mentioned, but I do try to give my best. Right? Whenever I'm around people, I'm not always, obviously I'm human. I get irritated and I get frustrated, at times. But I do try to give people my best, and I do try to present calmly and respectfully and, be civil and diplomatic, let's say, right? I'm trying to be just a good person, right? Like, I respect this person. It's a solid human being. That's what I strive to be. All that being said, there are moments of silence when I'm in the car, when I'm in the shower, when I'm getting ready to go to bed, when when it's late at night and it's just me up getting my work done or getting organized, or just sitting in the car eating my food. It's actually been very therapeutic to just sit and listen, or not think, or not have to think of what I'm going to say, or actively listen to somebody else speaking, right? That's been my rest, honestly. Like, I can actually feel my mind and my body at rest, recuperating from all the interactions of the day. And so that's for me personally, but I also bring this up because I think in today's world, most people, I'd be interested to hear, most people probably say that it's hard to find moments of silence, right? There's constantly interaction, there's no shortage of stimulus, let's say. You can go on your phone, obviously. You can go outside and talk to people, or if you are constantly around work people, friends, blah, 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 you can usually find something to fill the noise, to fill the silence, to fill the void, right? And so we're not very familiar with sitting in silence, but I think there's a lot of value that can come from that, and I'm sure there's a lot of quotes and concepts related to silence for sure. One of them that comes to mind is like, half of the world's problems stem from man's inability to sit in silence. That's really something to think about. I don't know who said the quote, and it's a paraphrase, but I think it's a pretty good paraphrase if I do say so myself. Corny. But yeah, if I bring this up because I think it's worth considering, is just can you sit in silence? Have you sit in silence? Is that something that you incorporate into your day? And again, for me, recently, it's been very therapeutic. So I appreciate it. And yeah, so that's kind of it on that particular topic. But it segues nice into this podcast being therapy for me as well. So I've mentioned this. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but at the first episode, actually. But essentially, I have all these ideas, but I don't always have somebody to sit down and talk to with. And even if I did, I don't know which ideas I would talk to them with. How long, how deep do we go? So it's hard, and I'm an overthinker. So, being in those situations is a very, it's a tricky thing to figure out, let's say. And so for me, this podcast, recording these dialogues have been therapy, have been kind of like the feeling you get when you do a big journal, right? I'm sure a lot of people have heard about journaling and probably do it to some extent. But this, recording this, speaking out loud, has been kind of like journaling for me. Is just seeing where my thoughts are, putting my thoughts out there, and then seeing what happens, essentially. And so it's felt good. It's felt therapeutic, to say the least. And, I'm happy to do it. I'm excited for what's to come. I've got more people on the way, a couple guests that are, should be coming up soon. So it's fun. It's exciting. It's nerve-wracking. It's challenging. All of the above. But like I said, I'm taking it on voluntarily. So here we are on the road to 100, and I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I am gonna read a quote. I'm gonna read a quote from Marcus Aurelius because I like it a lot, and I posted it on my gram earlier this week. Actually, I'll read two quotes. Y'all get two quotes on this one. So this one is from Marcus Aurelius, and he says, this is from Meditations: "If you work at that which is before you, following right reason seriously, vigorously, calmly, without allowing anything else to distract you, but keeping your divine part pure, as if you should be bound to give it back immediately. If you hold to this, expecting nothing, fearing nothing, but satisfied with your present activity according to nature, and with heroic truth in every word and sound which you utter, you will live happy, and there is no man who is able to prevent this." So again, that's Marcus Aurelius from Meditations. And then the last one. I'm going to just Google it real quick because I don't want to get it wrong. Okay, yeah. It's an African proverb, and it goes like this: "If there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm." Ladies and gentlemen, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Hope you have a good night, good day, wherever you are. Stay dry, stay warm, and hope to see you next time.